Yo, 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 what is going on, CoD Familia? It is your boy, BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder, and today I wanted to touch on the question that I have been more recently getting, which is, can you zero players in Call of Dragons? And how does the whole dead severely troop work? We're going to touch on that along with me giving you a little bit of some insight on how this feature and the way that Call of Dragons sets their ratios up actually lends a little bit towards the free-to-play kind of friendly perspective. And I'm going to explain that as well. So before we get started, as always, if you enjoy the content, be sure to sub, like, ring the notification bell so you can get updates on when we have new content coming out. And of course, if you want to join and be a part of our conversation, hit up the Discord. You can find a link to that in the pinned comment description right down below. Alrighty, so here we go. Let's start off by going first off to our source, which is our Shaman Hut or just your hospital. I just think it's so much easier to call it that. You're going to click on your heal sign, and then you're going to see here you have your question mark here near daily total healing. And then we have one up here in the top right of this bubble next to resource healing. We're going to click that. And then you're going to be able to see here as we kind of scroll down, here's the main one, which is 3 and 4. So 3 reads, when legions are defending against the enemy in a friendly city, or an alliance member city, so a player city, 10% of severely wounded units will die. And 50% of the enemy's severely wounded units will die, right? So essentially what that means is that if you are defending and in garrison, 10% of your troops will die, right? Of total severely wounded. And then 50% of the attacker's troops will die that are severely wounded. In a pass, number 4, when legions are defending against an enemy attack at a pass, 35% of severely wounded units will die, and then 50% of the enemies, the attackers, severely wounded units will die. There is no limit to the capacity of your Shaman Hut, right? You could have 1 million troops healing in here, right, essentially, or however many. Now, before we touch on a few other things, I want to touch on this specifically. To me, it seems as though, and as I'm trying to kind of extrapolate what I think the mindset is here on why they want the defender to take less deaths than the attacker, I think it's more so because when you're attacking, that's an aggressive action, and maybe the hope, and this is just what I think it could be, doesn't mean what it is. My thought is that, okay, because the attacker is the aggressor, the hope is that if you're attacking, you should be attacking from a position of somewhat strength, but more so a kind of first to act, right? Where you might be catching them off guard. You're maybe prepared, right? You're attacking because you're prepared to do that, prepared to do a rally. And so in those cases, right? And remember, it doesn't matter if it's a rally or if it's, because it doesn't say it has to be a rally, right? It just says when they get attacked / defending. So that's my logic that I'm going with on why I think the percentages are this way. However, would I be mad if the percentages were even? If they just said, hey, we're going to do a flat 25% dead when you're attacking cities, and then we'll do a flat 50% or 35 or 45% dead when you're attacking passes. I'd be fine with that too. Of course, I would love to hear why they decided to go with these specific percentages. Maybe they did it because it's more in line with what my thought was on why they are. Maybe it's for another reason. But taking time to explain that on why the percentages are the way they are is important. Adding context to your game where you are giving players a reasoning, a justification on why you are doing something the way you are, allows for players to feel better about the situation because now they're informed. It doesn't matter if they agree or they disagree with it. The fact is that you've at least taken time to explain your reasoning for why you've chosen to do something the way that you have. Okay, right? And then obviously over the course of time and as more data is collected, maybe this changes. Maybe some of the percentages vary. What I will say is that if they're not going to go with just a flat even ratio and they do decide to percentages and they do decide to change it in the future, do small changes. Don't do drastic changes, right? It's a lot easier to say, hey, we're testing data and therefore we're going to do a 5% change, right? Or maybe a 10% change here. That to me seems more reasonable if one is to happen later down the road. Now, let's talk about how this factors in to being a little bit more free-to-play friendly. And I'm going to explain this. So as we go back into the Shaman Hut or your hospital, we know that you can have an unlimited amount of troops that are healing here. But then we need to take a look at the most important part, or the next important part, which is that you have a limit on how many total troops you can heal, right? This is factored into a few things, right? It says choosing free healing will not cost, right? And remember, we're looking at free healing, right? There's two options. We're going to start here, then we're going to go to resource healing so we can really explain this. So choosing free healing will not cost resources, but it will take some time. In free healing mode, severely wounded units in your Shaman Hut will be healed for free. Your heal speed is determined by your Shaman Hut level and total unit count, including legions in your Shaman Hut. The higher your total units and the level of those units, the faster your heal speed. In addition, oh, interesting. Wow. So that means like the higher total number. Interesting. So that's actually pretty cool. So that means the healing rate would be higher. Would be higher if you have like 1 million T5s in there compared to maybe, as far as the rate, not the total time it'll take to heal, right? You could have 100,000 T1s and the healing rate could be, 5 units a second. And maybe it takes a day to heal all of them. But you could have 1 million T5s in there and maybe the healing rate is 10 units a second, but it would take a couple days to heal everything, right? So, but that's pretty cool. It's kind of what that means. At least that's what I'm getting from that. So I actually really like that. It almost really seems, and this is what I'm talking about. Just give us some explanations, right? The logic to me actually is pretty sound. I like that idea where the healing rate based on the level of the hut, it says heal speed is determined by Shaman Hut level and total unit count. The higher your total units, meaning the higher total amount, and then the level of those units, which I would imagine experience level and maybe tier level, right? T1, Tier 2, up to T5 possibly, unless it just means the actual level. But no, it can't be, because that would be the level of your heroes. You don't have experience levels for the unit, so it has to be tiers. So I like that. And then it says, in addition, enacting relevant policies will also increase your total heal speed. So, but what this really means is that regardless, you still have a total amount of troops, units, that can be healed per day. That is a hard cap. It just depends on how high you can raise the cap, but eventually it'll max out. So an example, if we just take right now, you see free healing, which is 41,000. That's the total healing for free. Right? Policy, heal speed, you can see all this, right? And this is I think, I don't even think I've leveled this building up, just to give you an example here, right? Yeah, this is a level 1. And then I look at resource healing. If I click on resource healing, right, I believe it more or less says the same thing, but it says choosing resource healing will cost resources, but heals legions instantly. Resource healing has a maximum daily limit, which is determined again by your Shaman Hut level and total unit count. And then same thing. So you have free and resource, but resource I can only heal 32,000 per day, right? So I have 32,000 and then 41,000. So I'm looking at, if I can do some math real quick, 73. So that's 73,000 units I can heal, right? As far as, well, let me be clear. The free healing is what I'm getting, and that's the max that you can heal. So technically it is the max you can heal per day, right? So you're looking at doing a total healing per 24-hour period. And then if you were to heal these with resources, then you're healing them immediately, right? So that's your total per day. The reason I say that this is a little bit more free-to-play friendly is because what it means is that even if you are a whale and you're spending $1,000, a couple thousand, however much a month, right? Even if you're max buying bundles, you are still going to be capped at how much healing you can do per day. The only difference is that you can train as, potentially still, right, unlimited or however many troops, right? You don't really have a cap-ish or soft cap on that. And so you still have the ability to do more on that side than a free-to-play player can. But this is still, I take this as a win when it comes to how the system is implemented, and the fact that it does limit you at least in some ways, but it doesn't fully strap or cap players that spend money. So to me, again, I like this. And then that really kind of comes down to the very last thing, which is, right, how would you technically go about zeroing a player, right? Can you do that? Technically, you can. You would just need to make sure that your rallies or your swarms on a city are constantly winning and you're basically taking favorable trades, right? And by doing that, you will eventually, over time, it might take a while, but over time, you'll be able to zero someone, or better yet, right, zero the troops that are not in the hospital yet. Because you have to think about it, right? They're still getting the healing. And because it's a low percentage of troops, right? Let's say you have 1 million troops. You attack, you win, they lose 100,000, right? But you're probably going to have a couple 100,000 that are going to go into the hospital, which means the next time you do a rally, maybe they only have 500,000 available, right? So then you're killing 10% of that. That's 50,000 dead. And then you're going to have the majority of those or a decent amount going to the hospital. So then it's kind of this matter of you have to wait for them to re-heal back up so they can have a large enough amount of troops available. So that way that 10% that you're hitting with kills or creates more deads rather than less, right? It's like the difference between them having 100,000 troops and 500,000 troops before you do a rally. You're going to incur less dead if you're constantly doing back-to-back rallies on them. However, you're still incurring dead, right? And you're still looting resources, and you're still burning their walls down. So, at that point, it's probably a little bit more of a psychological and kind of continued, I don't want to say bashing, but just damage, right? Kind of more of a DOT, a damage over time that you're doing, where it's not kind of a big lump sum amount of dead that you're incurring, but just more so accumulation over consecutive attacks or consecutive rallies. And then you got to think about with passes, right? So passes is really where you're going to be incurring the most dead on both sides, right? From the highest percentages, right? 35% to the defender, and then 50% if you're, 35% to the defender, 50% on the attacker. So then in that sense, you are really going to be doing, like, we, as an example, right, I have a video out where we saw, triple rallies that were going down on a pass in server 2, where you had, I think it was like OWL, if I remember correctly, and then it was DWD and, oh God, I'm forgetting the other one, Pain. No, not Pain. I'm forgetting, I apologize. But they were going up against TA, and they were just doing these back-to-back rallies, and there were some days where they were just doing them all the time. And so, when you look at it from that perspective, there's a lot of dead. So the reports were wild, and you're incurring all this dead over a period of time, and that's just something that when you're thinking about it is you're really fighting nonstop. So at that point, it's not that you're kind of getting zeroed. It's that the amount of troops that you have out in the field are taking the most amount of damage. So you could also make the argument, I guess this is where my mind was trying to catch up to the thought, is that you could actually zero a player faster if you're constantly doing pass rallies, because the percentage that the defender is taking as dead is higher, which means that they'll have less overall troops in their city if they keep replenishing for eventually when you start rallying cities, as an example. Yeah, do I think that the percentage for dead should be a little bit higher than 10% on cities? I do. I mean, I would take 20, 25. I think that's a little bit more reasonable, where, you're still not, because otherwise, maybe you'd have to do like 100 rallies on someone to really have some level of impact, give or take. Of course, we're going to have to see how these play out, but just based on the information we have right now, right, I think there's pros and cons to the system. I do think it leans a little bit more onto the side of that I like it and I'm more in favor of it with how it's set up, but I do think there could be some opportunities there. With that in mind, for those of you that have been doing a lot of PvP, do you share my similar thoughts? Do you have a different viewpoint on it? Do you think the percentages should be higher? What do you even think the percentages should be when defending and attacking a city and defending and attacking a pass? I'd love to know. Let me know in the comments down below. That is it for me. As always, until next time, I will catch you later.